The bloodshed was ripping Iraqi society apart. Over the summer of 2007, entire districts were sealed off by concrete walls, Sunnis on one side, Shias on the other, and many families were split down the middle.
The woman is from Al-Shia sector and the husband is from Al-Sunni sector. So he can't stay with her. He had to go to live in another area.
US and Iraqi forces had deployed to the troubled areas of the capital in a bid to clear residential neighborhoods of weapons, fighters and militiamen.
The approach was quite different. This was no longer an army attacking an enemy population. This was an army that was going to take ground, hold it, and then construct security on the ground that it had taken.
Despite the build-up, the number of daily attacks in July had risen to the highest level since May 2003. Death squads were continuing their campaigns of gruesome torture and mutilation. Over a 30-day period, nearly 600 corpses were found dumped around the capital. Baghdad, soaked in blood, was crumbling. And in this oil-rich country, people were facing fuel shortages, queuing for hours in one of the most dangerous places in the world for just a few liters of petrol.
I am not a human being. I am a machine which worries all the time about everything. I had to wait for the day when they deliver oil to our area and to queue in 2 or 3 hours to have some of it, or sometimes I don't get anything. I had to overcome my sadness and postpone my dreams and to be good, to be nice, to be happy in front of my children. Otherwise they will not get sad or damage their personalities. I want another life.
The National Unity Government of Prime Minister al-Maliki was disintegrating as well. On August 1st, the largest Sunni bloc suspended its participation.
If you are a Sunni Arab who was locked out of the constitutional negotiations in 2005 until nearly the end, never really figured in the big decisions that were made, are not happy with what was resolved in terms of the federal structure of the country, what incentive do you have to commit to the political future of Iraq if basic commitments that have been made to you are not honored?
This boycott, added to the pullout of the SADR bloc in 2006, meant that 1/3 of the cabinet posts were vacant. But on July 29th, the whole nation erupted in celebration. Sunnis, Shias and Kurds united in their joy. The Iraq football team had won the Asia Cup. For the first time in years, Iraqis were all of one voice. Sports had done more to bridge their differences than any cleric, politician or armed group ever could. However, the unity wouldn't last. By the end of August, inter-Shia fighting flared up once again. Mahdi army militiamen loyal to MOQTADA SADR were battling members of the Badr organization loyal to rival cleric Abdelaziz al-Hakim in the holy city of Karbala. The fighting erupted at a time when nearly 1 million pilgrims had flocked to Karbala for a religious ceremony. The clashes marked a new phase in the struggle that was increasingly gripping southern Iraq. 4 days later, MOQTADA al-Sadr announced a 6-month ceasefire. His militia, accused of some of the worst sectarian killings, had become unpopular even among Shias. It was time for a house clearing.
We don't say that all of Jaish al-Mahdi, all the persons within Jaish al-Mahdi are fully under control. It is something impossible inside Iraq. You see, we are trying ourselves in order to have the full control.
The violence went down dramatically when MOQTADA SADR declared his freeze. It's not a coincidence. It's a sign that Shia militias were the primary impetus behind violence in Iraq.
For the Americans, the timing couldn't have been better. With the South temporarily calm, George Bush flew to El Anbar province, the former stronghold of Al-Qaeda, in a show of support for his newfound friends, Sunnis who were forming the awakening councils.
There was a realization by the Sunnis that they had a common enemy with the Americans. And they collaborated with the Americans against Al-Qaeda, and also realized that their only hope, if they were going to survive in Iraq, is the American presence. Sunni friends of mine who were against the occupation in 2006 began to be very nervous when they heard talk of an American withdrawal, because they knew that it would be Rwanda the next day.
It was a carefully choreographed trip that showed a beaming George Bush standing side by side with Sunni tribal leaders. The perfect image just a week ahead of the first of the CROCKER-PETRAEUS progress reports to Congress. On September 10th, the two men were very cautious about reporting any tangible progress, stating that they needed more time to quell the violence. Ambassador Crocker warned of the consequences of a hasty withdrawal.
I am certain that abandoning or drastically curtailing our efforts will bring failure.
But pressured by public opinion, President Bush announced that he will be reducing the number of troops. Polls show the move doesn't go nearly far enough. A majority of Americans would like to at least double the number of soldiers returning home, and even think that the surge has made things worse. The fact that 2007 was the deadliest for U.S. military personnel since the invasion had pushed President Bush to rethink his Iraq policy once more. Sunnis were no longer behind the bulk of U.S. casualties. 80% of the attacks were being carried out by Shia militias. It had become much safer for American soldiers to travel through the infamous desert roads of the so-called Sunni Triangle than through Shia-dominated areas north of Baghdad. Prospects of national reconciliation were made even more unlikely when the SADR bloc once again pulled out its support, this time from the ruling Shia coalition.
The coalition and its people inside the parliament brought nothing good to the Iraqi people. The parliament is divided among sectarian lines, and quitting it was a protest against the rampant sectarianism and the lack of services for our people.
By fall, the wave of uprising against Al-Qaeda was slowly reaching Baghdad.
Had it not started in Al-Anbar, you would have not been able to come into existence. What happened there was heroic. Without Al-Anbar, we couldn't have done anything here in Baghdad. We had our backside protected.
Awakening councils became the focus of the U.S. military strategy in Iraq, supporting and financing men who were once enemies. A marriage of convenience between two former foes. But the Iraqi government was deeply suspicious.
We should understand, though, I think, some legitimate reservations about some of these groups. They were, in many cases, insurgent groups. It took us a few years to get past the fact that these individuals had our blood on their hands in some cases, not all cases by any means, but at least had given tacit approval to Al-Qaeda's activities. But this is how you end an insurgency. You can't kill your way out of an insurgency. You can't kill everyone who has ever raised a rifle against you or planted an IED.
Just as the Americans were basking in the few security improvements, they suffered two blows from two close allies. On October 8th, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown announced a phased withdrawal from southern Iraq.
And the story of the British slow withdrawal from Basra is precisely a story of British forces, British authorities realizing that there's no way they could control or make an impact on Iraqi society, so they had to let it do what it was doing to itself. And as a result, there was considerable violence in Basra, but nothing on the scale that you saw elsewhere. There was no British attempt to reconquer Basra or drive out corrupt and smuggling networks from Basra. Effectively, they let Basra be carved up.
And then, on October 17th, the Turkish parliament voted to allow a full-scale military incursion into northern Iraq to go after the Kurdish rebel group PKK. The move threatened to drag Iraqi Kurdistan, the only stable area of the country, into chaos.
They were very serious in my view, and they were determined to have a large-scale land incursion. It was very, very sensitive. But the Turkish military, they knew that it would be tough, it would not be easy, there would be fighting, and it could not have been controlled also within the boundaries of northern Iraq.
The Americans were at a loss. put on the spot at having to mediate between their two allies, Turkey and the Kurds. The latter were furious with Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and threatened to retract their support from his government. He had gone to Ankara and pledged to chase the rebel group from the mountains of northern Iraq, despite the fact that under the new federal system, he had no authority in the Kurdish north.
Turkey refuses to talk to us and to enter into discussions with us, yet wants to solve the problem. Well, this is not possible. There is no military solution to this problem. The minute Turkey needs our help in reaching a peaceful solution, we will be ready to offer our support. But if they focus on a military solution, then we will not be part of it. Not today, not tomorrow, or at any point in the future.
By the end of the year, General PETRAEUS reported that violence in Iraq had decreased by 60%. However, the figures reflect only sectarian killings and took no account of the thousands of victims of car bombs and explosions. More Iraqis were fleeing their homes than ever before, and Al-Qaeda wasn't defeated. It had simply relocated to other parts of a broken Iraq. And political reconciliation, the only hope to stop the bloodshed, was at an impasse.